Welcome to Web 100. In previous video, we have seen about creating about section. In this video, we can see about the number counting. Div class CSS container. This is the outermost container for the entire content. It is used to group all the elements together. Div class CSS row. Inside the container, there is a div element with a class of row. This is commonly used in CSS frameworks like Bootstrap to create rows of content. Div class box. Within the row, there are several box elements. Each box seems to represent a container for some content. Div class heading. Example. Inside each box, there is a div element with a class of heading that contains the text example. This is likely a heading or title for each box. Div class, counting number, data target, 1000. Also inside each box, there is another div element with two classes, counting and number. This div contains a number, initially set to 0, and has a data target attribute set to a specific numeric value. This attribute is likely used for animating the number counting from 0 to the specified target value. To summarize, this code creates a structure for a web page with multiple boxes, each having the same heading, example, and a number inside. The interesting part is the counting functionality, where the numbers inside the boxes can be animated to count up to their respective data target values, presumably using JavaScript or a similar scripting language. Row. This rule applies to elements with the class row. It sets the padding to 50px, making space around the elements within it. It also makes the row a flex container, display, flex, allowing its child elements to be horizontally aligned with space between them. Justify content, space between. Finally, it adds a margin bottom of 20px to create space below the row. Box. This rule applies to elements with the class box. It sets the width of each box to be 20% of the parent container's width minus 20px. It adds margin, 10px, and padding, 20px, around each box, creates a 1px solid border with a gray color, CC, and centers the text within the box, text align, center. Heading. This rule applies to elements with the class heading. It makes the text bold, font weight bold, and adds some margin, 10px, below the heading. Number. This rule applies to elements with the class number. It sets the font size to 40px and makes the text bold, font weight bold. It seems like there is a mistake in this rule. The selector.number counting is not necessary here. It's likely meant to be a separate rule. Number counting. This rule is meant to apply to elements with both number and counting classes. It uses a counter reset, counting, and defines an animation called CountUp. This animation will be applied to elements with this class combination. A keyframes CountUp. This is an animation definition. It defines the CountUp animation, which starts from an initial state with the element translated 20px down and completely transparent, invisible, and it gradually transforms to its normal position, no translation, and full opacity, visible, over a 2-second duration, 2s, with an ease-out timing function. Const counting elements. Document.querySelectorAll, number data target. This line selects all elements with the class number that also have a data target attribute. It stores these elements in the counting elements array-like object. Function start counting. This is a JavaScript function called start counting. It is defined to initiate the counting animation. Counting elements for each element add. This loop iterates over each element in the counting elements array. Const target. Parsent element.getAttribute data target. Inside the loop, this line retrieves the data target attribute of the current element, which represents the target number to which the element should count. It converts the attribute value to an integer and stores it in the target variable. Let current now 0. This initializes a variable called current to 0. This variable will be used to keep track of the current value that the element is displaying. Const counting interval. Set interval. 10. This line sets up an interval, repeated function execution, with a 10 millisecond delay. The function inside the set interval will be executed repeatedly until it's cleared. If current os target. Else, inside the interval function, it checks whether the current value has reached or exceeded the target value. If it has, it clears the interval, clear interval, counting interval, which stops the counting animation. If not, it increments the current value by 1 and updates the text content of the element to reflect the new value. Element.textContent current. Window.addEventListener load start counting. Finally, an event listener is added to the window object to execute the start counting function when the page has fully loaded. This ensures that the counting animation starts only after all the page elements are ready. In summary, this JavaScript code loops through elements with the class number and animates each element's number from 0 to its respective data target value using a set interval-based approach. It starts the counting animation when the page is fully loaded.